Hey guys, another video for our how to do stuff in Japan playlist, and it's another one of those ones that's more of a heads up video rather than having to actually do anything or suggesting you actually do anything. It's just a heads up video so that when this experience happens to you, you'll be prepared for it and maybe you'll deal with it better than you would if you weren't prepared for it. So we've touched on little aspects of this particular topic before in previous videos. Some of you might recognize different aspects of it, but this video's been triggered. Probably the best place to start with it is to tell you what triggered the video. So what triggered it was, we went to a snow park on the weekend that we go to just about every year. So I've been there lots of times, and they have a kids sort of area where you can rent a tire. They have these tires with covers on them with handles that are pretty cool, and you can rent these tires and slide down the hill on them. And we do that just about every year. So we're there doing that, and we're quite happily, you rent the tire, 300 yen for 30 minutes, and we're quite happily doing it for a while there. And there was the staff at the top of the run helping us out. You know, they spin you around as you go down the hill, and the staff changed. The young guy that was doing it went away, and an old guy appeared, and he was standing there. And it was pretty busy. It was on the weekend, so it was pretty busy. Lots of people in the queue to go down this hill, and so there's people before us, and then we watched them, you know, get set up and go, and then it was our turn. And there was people behind us as well, all waiting. And because Japanese style of queuing, everybody stands pretty close. Everybody's pretty close. And this guy says in English, "The tire is 30 minutes. And I answered in Japanese and said, "Yes, I know." And he said, "And if the 30 minutes is finished, you have to take it back," right? And it's fairly, his English was pretty bad, and it was, so the way he was speaking was fairly sort of abrupt. Some people might consider it rude. And I said, "How long's it been?" Because I suspected it hadn't been 30 minutes yet. I wasn't checking the time, but I suspected it hadn't been 30 minutes yet. And I said, "How long's it been?" He said, and I'm speaking Japanese, he's speaking English, right? And he said he didn't know how long it had been. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "But you have to take it back." And I said, "Well, if it's got to 30 minutes, we'll just pay for another 300 yen. And I said, "Do you want the 300 yen? And no, you have to take it back, or you have to pay the money, or no, I don't want your money." And it's really abrupt. And there was a few things about that, of course. He didn't say that, he didn't know how long we'd had the thing. He didn't know how long we'd had the tire, whether it had been 20 minutes or 40 minutes, he didn't know. And he didn't say it to the Japanese people before us, and he didn't say it to the Japanese people after us. And I was answering him and speaking to him in Japanese, and he was speaking to me in very poor quality English. And the people that were behind us are all standing there in a row and start laughing, because as mentioned in previous videos, when Japanese people feel uncomfortable, they start laughing. And because this guy, it was making a bit of a scene, because everybody behind us was waiting for us to go. And it was quite obvious that I wasn't real impressed with his questioning. And I was giving him, I said, "Do you want me to give you the 300 yen? And no, I don't want the 300, because he doesn't take the money, another guy takes the money." So this is really common. We experience this quite a bit, and what it is, it can be a number of things. So first of all, let's say worst case scenario, what it makes you feel like. It makes you feel like you're being accused of something dishonest, right? Because, you know, he's not saying it to anyone else, and suddenly he's saying to me, it sort of makes it sound like I'm keeping this thing longer than I'm entitled to, and I haven't paid for the next 30 minutes, and it's like I'm trying to sort of scam them out of a dollar or something, is the worst case scenario, right? And that was why the Japanese people behind us were laughing, because it was an uncomfortable situation. They're not, as explained in a previous video, they're not laughing to make us feel bad, they're laughing to try and alleviate the situation and make it light. But in actual fact, to a non-Japanese person, it just makes it worse, right? Because it means that they're all listening and they're all laughing, and it just makes it worse. And it really spoils a really pleasant experience, because we're there having a great time, everything's good, everybody's happy, and then suddenly you got this old guy doing this, you know. And So worst case scenario, he's actually accusing you of trying to scam them out of $1, right? Worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is his experience of foreigners is that foreigners are not honest, and he's trying to scam, and he's accusing us of trying to scam them out of $1. That's the worst case scenario, right? In actual fact, there's a few other alternatives to what's going on there. One is that it's a big part of Japanese culture is the setsume, is the explanation, right? And we've talked about that on previous videos too. And the setsume is a really big part of Japanese culture. We actually predict it's going to be a big problem during the Olympics, because the Japanese way of doing things is there's always a big setsume. Before you do anything, there's always a big explanation, unnecessary usually. So they'll have a sign up explaining the rules, and then before they'll give you the tire or before they'll give you something else, they'll give you the big setsume, give you the big explanation of the rules. If you go to an onsen or somewhere like that, you're likely to get it too. And in actual fact, what happens is, if you're a foreigner, and it doesn't matter, you could have lived in Japan for 20 years, your Japanese could be really good. In our case, we'd been to that place every year for a few years, so we know how their system operates, we know all about it. And it doesn't matter. They take one look at you and you're a foreigner, and then some people will treat you differently straight away just because you're a foreigner and assume you don't know anything, and then give you the big setsume. And that can happen a lot too. You go to somewhere like an onsen, you might have been to an onsen, 100 times and know all about it, and you might have been to that particular onsen 100 times. But then, the Japanese people before you will pay their money to go into the onsen, and they'll get their towel and off they'll go into the onsen, and then it's your turn, and then the staff decide to give you a big 15-minute setsume on the rules. And see, this is actually a big part of Japanese culture. Giving people big lectures and telling people the rules is really normal here, and Japanese people react to that by going, hi. And even if they do know the rule already, they'll still be very grateful for being told, because they accept it, that that's the way things are done. And they'll, oh yes, thank you very much, I understand, thank you very much, I understand. And in actual fact sort of behave as if they didn't know the rule to be polite. So it's very normal for Japanese people to be told the rules, and they're very comfortable with it. And so if we give the old guy the benefit of the doubt, it's quite possible that he's taken one look at us and gone, okay, this guy's a foreigner, I'd better tell him the rules because he might not know. And then his English was really bad, so it's possible that he was trying to be polite, but his English just wasn't good enough, and as a result, you get this thing, talked about it on another video once before, about the lady in the convenience store saying, spoon, complete with acting it out. Do you want a spoon, and talk to you like you're a child? And quite often, it's just because, we've talked about Japanese people, some Japanese people not being the best communicators in the world, even with each other. 20-minute phone calls between two Japanese people, and at the end of it you ask what the outcome was and they don't know, and it happens quite a lot. Yoko wakaranai, you hear that a lot in Japan. Yoko wakaranai, I don't really know. And people have big discussions, big meetings, and at the end of it you say, what was the result? Yoko wakaranai, don't really know. And so it's possible that in a case like with this old guy, that he's just not a good communicator. And quite often what can happen is, you get someone like him, you could well hear him talking to a Japanese person the same way. If you hung around long enough, it could happen later on in the day. It could. Again, giving him the benefit of the doubt. And the old lady in the convenience store with the spoon. It's quite often, you might be the first foreigner they've encountered. And if you're out in the countryside in particular, less likely in the city, but when you're out in the countryside, I've been told by older people in the countryside before that I'm the first foreigner they've ever spoken to. I was told that across the table at a business meeting once, and everybody got all embarrassed. This old guy in the meeting went, oh, I've never met a foreigner before, he said. Never spoken to a foreigner before, and he must have been about 70 years old. Never met a foreigner before, and he said it to me as soon as we met. And everybody else around the table got all uncomfortable because it seemed like a bit of a thing to say at the time, But again, in that case, that old guy was fairly innocent too. But it's sort of, what it is if you've only been in Japan for a couple of weeks or a few months or a year or two, you know, this sort of thing isn't a big deal because you're only been here a short time yourself, so it's all a bit of a novelty for you as well. So when they say these things, quite often at first it just makes you feel a bit special, you know, when you get a different reaction, when you get a different reaction from the people than what the other people, the Japanese people get, it can make you feel a bit special at first. But what can happen is after you've been here a long time and you've done your best to get your Japanese up to a reasonable level, and you've done your best to understand how things are done and paid attention, as we've said before, look, listen and learn, you know, look, listen and learn how things are done, and you've done your best and you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, and then you get a different reaction, and that can be really difficult, and it's sort of like this constant reminder that you're foreign, that you're different, you know, and I mean, of course it's the case. I mean, it's the reality, and a lot of people listening to this will say, well, yeah, of course, you know, duh, you are different. Well, that's true, but what becomes tiresome is when you are doing the same as everybody else, and you're doing exactly the same thing everybody else is doing, you're responding the same way everybody else is doing, you're speaking Japanese to a reasonable level, and then you get an old guy like that. You know, they can't help themselves too. If they can speak a little bit of English, quite often they want to. Some people don't want to, and they just won't speak English to you at all, even if they can, because they're shy or whatever. But sometimes they just insist on speaking poor English to you, even when you're speaking reasonably good Japanese. And that can make it worse, because it's like, why are you speaking this poor English to me when I'm speaking Japanese to you the same way the last person did? You know, and it interferes with the communication then too, because they're trying to tell you something and their English might be no good, and they're trying to, like this guy was trying to explain, and it just came across as really, really rude. You know, after 30 minutes you must take it back. After 30 minutes you must take it back. So, you know, it just comes across as really, really rude, and it's like, why are you saying this to me and you're not saying it to anybody else? So worst case scenario is he's just a straight out bigot, and because see, the thing is, you can't complain about this. There's no point in saying to him, why are you saying this to me and you're not saying it to anybody else? There's no point, and there's no point in going to his boss and saying, look, you know, he's not the right person to be dealing with foreigners because he's really rude, and you know, if he's going to be speaking English, he needs to speak English politely because he's really rude. You know, there's no point, because they won't get it. They'll think that you're the problem. They'll think that it's because you're a foreigner that you're rocking the boat. They'll assume that they won't understand the bigotry, discrimination thing. They don't understand that at all. Even your friends, you know, if you've got Japanese friends, they don't get it because they haven't experienced it. So they don't know what it's like to be a non-Japanese person living in Japan, where we experience, it's sort of a discrimination fairly regularly, because it might be positive or negative. You know, people might be trying to be, let's give the old guy the benefit of the doubt, he might have been trying to be more helpful because he assumed that I was a foreigner and I didn't know how things were done. That's quite possible. It's not like you struggle to accept that. You try and give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's really hard when they're being quite impolite to you in English, you know. But it's possible. It is possible. He's just trying to help. And the problem is, if you go to his boss and say that guy's been really rude to foreigners, the boss is just going to think, well, he was just being helpful to you. He was trying to help you, and that's probably what they'd tell you. They'd say, oh, I'm very, very sorry. He was just trying to help you because you're a foreigner. And you can say, well, yeah, but I've lived in Japan for 20 years and I've been to this snow park, you know, a dozen times, and I know how things are done, and I don't need him to help. Oh, sorry, he was just trying to... Wouldn't achieve anything. So basically the idea of this video was just to give you a heads up that, look, you're going to experience this for sure. You're going to experience this being treated differently thing, and the longer you live here, the more it will bother you. You know, to those people who've only been here a few months or a few weeks, probably you'll appreciate that little bit of extra help and the advice, probably. And someone speaking a little bit of English to them will probably feel very helpful. You know, at first it often does. But this is more, if you're going to be here long term, And those people who've been here for a long time will recognize this, you know. And I know a couple other foreign people that live in Japan too, and they'll talk about this. They've been here a long time too. And you just, you know, just that being spoken to like a child, you know. Do you want a spoon? Spoon? You know? Oh, you know, come on. Yeah, and when you've seen the way the person in front of you is treated, and then you hear the way the person after you is treated, and the way you're treated is totally different, just because you look different, you know. And you might have said the same thing that the customer before said in Japanese. You say the same thing that they said. You behave exactly the same way they did. So it's not your behaviour and it's not your language. It's just the fact that you look different. That you're a foreigner, so you get the different treatment. So there's nothing you can do about it. It's always going to be the case. The sort of the concepts of discrimination or bigotry or everybody being treated the same, everybody being treated equally, all those sort of concepts really aren't part of Japanese culture. You know, the people, and see, he's an older guy as well. So the older guy giving someone younger than him the explanation or the description of what he should do, telling him the rules, again, is a perfectly normal thing to do in Japan. And if you're with Japanese friends and you complain about that to them and say, why's the old guy telling me that, they won't get it. They won't get it, because they'll say, oh, he was trying to help you. He was trying to help you. And in fact, if there's Japanese people watching this video, that's probably what they're going to say. Oh, he was trying to help you. He was trying to help you. That's the way they'd see it. And so if you make a fuss about it, they don't like it. That's why videos like this always get lots of thumbs down and the occasional unhappy comment from a Japanese person, because they don't like videos like this. They think that pointing out things like this that make you uncomfortable is not a polite thing to do. But the motivation to make this video is just so that if you've heard these things, you know, we've made a lot of videos like this, these heads up videos. And the reason is that if you've heard these things, it might stay in the back of your head somewhere. So when it happens to you, and if you live in Japan long term, you can be guaranteed this will happen to you. It'll happen in the bank or the post office or somewhere you're going to go, and you're going to get different treatment to the other people just because you look different. You know, and it'll happen. They'll take one look at you. You're a foreigner. That means you don't understand anything. And even if you're speaking Japanese to them, they don't stop to think, wait a minute, this guy's actually speaking Japanese reasonably well. They don't think like that. They think he's a foreigner. He probably doesn't understand. And straight away, you'll get treated differently from everybody else. And you'll feel like you're being treated like you're stupid. Spoon. Or in the case of this old guy, you feel like you're being treated like a criminal, you know. And that was that case. Even though I knew, the back of my mind, I knew, no, I know what's going on here. You can't help your feelings. You can logically think about these things, but the feeling of being publicly embarrassed as if you're trying to rip them off for $1. I mean, 300 yen for 30 minutes is $3, you know. And it was like I wanted to throw $100 at him, throw 10,000 yen at him and say, you know, shut the fuck up, you know. But it's not, no one would get it, you know. No one would get it. And again, as we've said before, the worst thing you can possibly do in a situation like that is react with any negativity at all. Any negativity at all. So I said to him, oh, do you want me to pay you now? Do you want me to pay you now? No, okay, all right, well, thank you very much, and off we went, you know. But it is really hard. So the purpose of this video again is just, if it happens to you, when it happens to you, if you live in Japan long term, when it happens to you, just let it go. Just be as nice as you can. And what'll happen is, as you live in Japan long term, you get used to everybody else being patient and polite, usually. So what'll happen is, if you do react badly in a situation like this, you'll feel bad about it later. And if there's anyone with you at all, if you're with friends or you're with anybody else, Japanese people, they're going to feel really bad if you behave badly, if you react badly to this. So you've really got to stay as cool and as polite as possible, and thank him. Thank the guy for trying to help you. Oh, I did actually see him again later on in the day. He walked past and he said, thank you. But even that was delivered in a way that most people would think sounded fairly, you know, abrupt and like unnecessary. But you know, the best thing you can do is just if a situation like this, if someone's giving you the big sets, man, telling you the rules, is just to thank them. Oh, thank you very much, and just leave it at that. Let it go. The worst thing you can do is to grab onto something like this and make it into a drama or a scene or a bigger problem, because it will escalate and make everyone uncomfortable. And if you're with Japanese people, they'll feel really uncomfortable about it if you make it into a drama. Whereas if you just let it go and act like it didn't happen, that's fine. And it's important to let it go, because you don't want to let it spoil your day. And it does happen, because these things happen unexpectedly. You know, quite often when we talk about topics like this, they must sound petty and trivial and that sort of thing. And if you're only here for a short time, they probably would be. You wouldn't even notice, probably. When you're here for a long term, when it keeps coming up, you know, you keep feeling like you're blending in reasonably well, and you get one of these scenarios come up, and it keeps coming back on you, and it usually happens when you least expect it. That's the other thing. When you can anticipate there's going to be a drama and you get ready for it, you can usually respond to it more positively. But it's usually when you least expect it. So you're having a good time, everything's great. We'd already gone down that slope 100 times already, and we're having a great time. And then suddenly you get this scene thrown at you out of nowhere that you weren't expecting, and that's where it gets you. So hopefully the idea of these videos is that when it happens to you, that somewhere in the back of your mind you remember this and go, oh yeah, that's right, this happens. This happens, and it's always going to happen. It's not going to stop happening. You know, Japan's trying to get ready for the 2020 Olympics, and they're changing the stickers on the toilets, and they're doing all sorts of ridiculous, pointless stuff to try and help foreigners feel comfortable here. But the most important stuff like this, they're not even aware of. And it's not going to change. And the reporters that all come here to report on the 2020 Olympics, they're probably going to talk about topics like this. The Setsume one's going to be a big one, because they're going to try and, all the visitors that come to the Olympics are going to be told the rules and told the systems, and big Setsumes, and stand over there and put on this number on your shirt and turn around 3 times, then go over there and put your name on the piece of paper, then come back over here and stand in line, wait in that tent. There'll be this, and that sort of behaviour is really normal here, and they'll expect the foreigners to do it, and you can just know it's not going to be good, you know. But they'll do it. That's what they're going to do, and they're always going to do it, and you just have to accept it. So when this comes up, in the back of your mind, just go, oh yeah, this happens. Let it go. Don't struggle with it. Don't react to it. Don't respond to it. Just let it go, you know. It's all you can do. It's all you can do. And just tell yourself he's probably trying to be helpful, you know. Bless him. Bless him. He's just trying to be helpful. Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.